Hangwu Park stared out the window of the coalition ship Crimson Dawn and watched the battle unfold in the cold darkness of space. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers against the black sky. Ships twisted and burned as they fought against the void swarm. He pressed his hand against the thick glass and felt small. So very small, around him, his alien teammates prepared for the next wave of attacks. Captain Vextar stood near the command center, his huge form covered in natural armor that looked like black metal. The Korthek's claws scraped against the floor as he moved. Each claw was longer than Hyanwu's hand and sharp enough to cut through steel. "Human," Vextar's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Are you ready to fight?" Hyanwu nodded and checked his plasma rifle. The weapon felt light in his hands compared to the massive guns his alien friends carried. Everything about him felt light compared to them. Sergeant Grix materialized from the shadows near the wall. The Mandorian's ability to phase through solid matter still made Hyanwu's skin crawl. Grix fed on fear, and right now there was plenty of it floating around the ship. The alien's eyes glowed with a soft blue light as he absorbed the terror of the human crew members. "The enemy approaches," Grix whispered. His voice sounded like wind through a graveyard. "I can taste their fear from here. It is ... sweet." "Admiral." Thokran floated into the room without using his legs. The Vorthex's psychic powers kept him hovering 3 feet off the ground. His large, bulbous head pulsed with veins that glowed purple when he used his mental abilities. Hyanwu had seen Thokran crush the minds of enemy soldiers from across a battlefield. The scream still haunted his dreams. "The void swarm has broken through our first line," Thokran announced. His voice echoed inside everyone's head instead of coming through their ears. "We must hold the second defensive position at all costs." Hyanwu had been fighting alongside these creatures for 5 years now. 5 long years since the human government had joined the Galactic Coalition. Before the war, these species had been the monsters that human children feared in bedtime stories. The Korthaks with their razor claws and acid blood. The Mandorians who could walk through walls and feed on nightmares. The Vorthaks who could reach into your mind and break it like a toy, but now they were allies. They fought together against something worse than any of them. The void swarm consumed entire star systems. They turned planets into empty husks and left nothing but darkness behind. The Coalition was the galaxy's last hope against total destruction. The ship shook as enemy fire hit their shields. Red lights flashed throughout the bridge. Human crew members ran to their stations, their faces pale with fear. Hyanwu watched them and felt ashamed. Humans looked so weak compared to their alien allies. "Incoming fighters," called out Nari Kim from her position at the science station. She was Hyanwu's childhood friend and one of the few humans who didn't seem afraid of their monstrous teammates. Her expertise in alien biology had saved their lives many times. Swarm bioships moving fast. Through the window, Hyanwu could see the enemy approaching. The void swarm ships looked like giant insects made of living metal. They pulsed with unsickly green light and moved in perfect coordination. No individual thought, no creativity. Just hunger and the drive to consume everything in their path. "Launch fighters," Captain Vextar ordered. His claws extended further as battle rage began to take hold. "All units, prepare for close combat." The Crimson Dawn released its fighter squadrons. Hyanwu watched as Korthek pilots flew their ships like extensions of their own bodies. They dove and twisted through space with impossible grace. When enemy ships got too close, the Korthak fighters would ram them directly. The pilots could survive the crashes thanks to their armored bodies. Mandorian stealth ships flickered in and out of visibility. They phased through enemy fire and appeared inside swarm vessels. Hyanwu could only imagine the terror of the Mandorians. Spread as they materialized in enemy corridors, the Vorthek command ships hung back and coordinated the entire battle with their collective psychic network. Thokran's eyes glowed brighter as he connected his mind to the other Vorthek commanders across the fleet. "Human fighters, maintain support positions," Vextar commanded. "Support positions. That's all humans ever did anymore." They stayed back, and provided covering fire while the real warriors did the fighting. Ha Hen Wu gripped his rifle tighter and tried not to feel useless. The battle raged for hours. The coalition forces fought with savage effectiveness. Hen Wu watched a Korthic boarding party tear through the hull of a swarm ship with their bare claws. Acid from their blood ate through the enemy's biometal armor. Mandorians spread panic through entire enemy fleets just by existing nearby. Vortex took control of enemy mines and turned swarm ships against each other, but it wasn't enough. "We're losing too many ships," Nari reported. Her voice was steady, but Haiyan Wu could see the worry in her eyes. "The swarm is adapting to our tactics faster than before." Admiral Thokarn's mental voice filled the bridge with despair. "3 fleets have fallen. The Kepler defense line is broken. We must retreat." The order came through the ship's communication system. All coalition forces were to fall back to the next defensive position. Another defeat? Another step closer to total destruction. As the Crimson Dawn turned away from the battlefield, Hen Wu watched the void swarm consume the wreckage of destroyed ships. They absorbed the metal and energy, growing stronger with each victory. Soon, they would be unstoppable. That's when the emergency transmission came through. "All coalition forces," the voice crackled with static. "Priority Alpha message. The void swarm has broken through the outer rim defenses. Main fleet is heading directly for Sol System. Earth is in immediate danger. All available ships report." For evacuation duty, the bridge fell silent. Even the alien warriors looked shaken. Earth was humanity's homeworld. If it fell, the human race would be scattered across the galaxy with no central government or military command. "I volunteer for evacuation duty," Haiyan Wu said. Stepping forward, Captain Vexstar looked at him with something that might have been pity. "Human, your species lacks the natural weapons needed for this fight. Perhaps it would be better if—" "No," Haiyan Wu interrupted. "My people need me. I'm going." Sergeant Grix materialized beside him. "The human shows courage, but courage without strength is meaningless. How will your soft bodies stand against the swarm?" Haiyan Wu didn't have an answer. He had watched his alien allies fight with claws and acid blood, with psychic powers and the ability to phase through matter. What did humans have? Just determination and stubbornness. Maybe that would have to be enough. Admiral, Thokarn's voice echoed in his mind one more time. "Very well, human. But know this, when we reach your homeworld, we may find nothing left to save." The Crimson Dawn changed course toward Earth. Haiyan Wu stared out at the stars and wondered if his home would still exist when they arrived. Behind them, the void swarm continued its relentless advance, consuming everything in its path. The real test was about to begin. The journey to Earth took 3 days. 3 days of watching the alien crew members prepare for what they all believed would be a rescue mission followed by a funeral. Han Wu spent most of his time in the observation deck, staring at the stars, and trying not to think about what they might find. Nari joined him on the second day. She sat down beside him without saying anything. They had been friends since childhood, growing up in the same small town before the war changed everything. "Do you think they're right?" she asked finally. "About what?" "About humans being too weak for this war." Haiyan Wu was quiet for a long moment. He had asked himself the same question every day for 5 years. "I don't know." "We don't have claws. Or psychic powers. We can't phase through walls or survive in vacuum. Maybe we are too weak." "But we're still here," Nari said. "We're still fighting, are we? Or are we just hiding behind our alien friends while they do the real work?" Before Nari could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Captain Vexstar's voice boomed over the communication system. "All hands to battle stations. We have arrived at Sol System. Enemy contact confirmed." Henlu and Nari rushed to the bridge. Through the main viewing screen, they could see Earth's solar system spread out before them, but something was wrong. Mars glowed with the sickly green light of void swarm bioships. The red planet was completely covered in enemy vessels, like a disease spreading across its surface. "Mars has fallen," reported the navigation officer. "Swarm forces are advancing toward Earth." Admiral Thokran floated into the bridge, his psychic abilities reaching out to scan the battlefield. I sense something unexpected. What do you mean? Captain Vextar asked. The humans. They are not fleeing. Henwu looked at the tactical display. Earth was surrounded by swarm ships, but human vessels were still fighting. Not just military ships, but civilian transports, mining vessels, even small personal craft. They were all engaged in combat. That's impossible, Sergeant Grix whispered. Civilian ships cannot fight bioships? But as they watched, a human cargo hauler rammed directly into a swarm fighter. The explosion took out 3 enemy vessels. Another mining ship had somehow attached massive drills to its hull and was boring through swarm bio-armor like it was soft clay. By the void, Captain Vextar breathed. What are they doing? General Taemin Choi's voice crackled through the communication system. He was the commander of Earth's defense force, and Hyun-woo had never heard him sound so calm during a battle. Coalition forces, this is Earth Command. We appreciate the assistance, but we have the situation under control. Please take defensive positions around Luna and provide support as needed. Support positions again. But this time, it was the humans giving orders to the aliens. Engineer So-Young Lee appeared on the main screen. She was covered in grease and looked like she hadn't slept in days, but her eyes were bright with excitement. We've made some modifications to our standard equipment, she explained. Turns out swarm bio-armor has a weakness to modified plasma frequencies. We've retrofitted everything from fighter weapons to mining lasers. Nari leaned forward in amazement. How did you figure that out? Coalition scientists have been studying swarm armor for years. We had to, So-Young replied simply. They were coming for our home. Lieutenant Wu Jingkang's fighter squadron streaked past the Crimson Dawn. Hyun-woo watched in shock as the human pilots performed maneuvers that would be considered suicidal by any military standard. They flew directly into swarm formations, taking hits that should have destroyed their ships, but somehow kept fighting. Those tactics are insane, Sergeant Grix observed. They will all die, but they didn't die. The human fighters were using their damaged ships as weapons, ramming enemy vessels when their guns ran out of ammunition. Pilots were ejecting at the last second, then being picked up by other human ships that swooped in like they had practiced the maneuvers 1,000 times. Captain Vextar watched the battle with growing confusion. This is not how warfare is conducted. Where is their formation? Their strategy? They're improvising, Hyun-woo realized. Every ship, every pilot is making their own decisions and adapting to the situation. Admiral Thokran's psychic voice filled the bridge with bewilderment. I cannot predict their movements. Their minds are ... chaotic, unpredictable. As the battle continued, more human reinforcements arrived. But these weren't military vessels. They were converted civilian ships, passenger liners with missile pods welded to their hulls, research vessels carrying experimental weapons, even space tugs dragging asteroids to use as projectiles. Commander Jin-A Moon contacted them from a stealth ship that appeared out of nowhere. Her vessel looked like it had been built from spare parts, but it moved with deadly precision. Coalition forces, we're going to need you to stay back, she said politely. We're about to try something that might be dangerous for non-human crews. What are you planning? Captain Vextar demanded. We're going to turn their own tactics against them, Jin-A replied. The swarm expects coordinated attacks from a central command. They're not prepared for complete chaos. What happened next defied everything Hyun-woo thought he knew about space combat. The human fleet scattered in all directions with no apparent plan or coordination. Ships attacked from impossible angles, retreated when they should advance, and grouped together in formations that made no tactical sense, but it worked. The swarm bioships, designed to counter organized military tactics, couldn't adapt to the complete unpredictability of human warfare. Their hive mind kept trying to predict patterns that didn't exist. Enemy ships collided with each other as they tried to respond to attacks that came from every direction at once. Dr. Dong Hyun, you appeared on the communication screen from a research station orbiting Earth. We've been studying swarm behavior since the first attacks, he explained. Their strength is perfect coordination, but that's also their weakness. They can't handle true randomness. Hinwoo watched a human fighter pilot named Captain Min-Soo Chun lead a squadron of damaged ships in what looked like a desperate retreat. But at the last second, they turned and fired everything they had at a massive swarm bioship. The combined fire from the retreating ships punched through the enemy's defenses and caused a chain reaction that destroyed half the swarm formation. Brilliant, Nari whispered. They made the swarm think they were running away. The battle raged for hours, but gradually the tide turned in humanity's favor. Not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through sheer creativity and refusal to follow any predictable pattern. As the last swarm ships around Earth were destroyed or driven off, Hyun-woo found himself looking at his human colleagues with new eyes. These weren't the weak, helpless people he had thought they were. They were something else entirely. Captain Vextar stood in stunned silence, his claws retracting as the battle ended. I have never seen anything like that, he admitted. How did they turn civilian ships into weapons of war? We used what we had, So Young replied from the engineering station. Mining lasers, construction equipment, cargo haulers, everything. Can be a weapon if you think about it the right way? Sergeant Grix materialized beside Hyun-woo, his blue eyes still glowing from feeding on the fear of the battle. But for the first time, the Mandorian looked uncertain. Your species fights without honor, Grix said. Without proper formation or tactics. We fight to win, Woo-jin replied over the communication system. Honor doesn't matter if everyone you're protecting dies. Admiral Thokran's psychic voice was filled with something Hin-woo had never heard from the Vorthek before, respect mixed with unease. You have held the line around your homeworld, Thokran acknowledged. But this was only a scouting force. The main swarm fleet is still coming. Millions of bioships that have consumed entire galactic sectors. General Taemin Choi appeared on the main screen again. His uniform was torn and bloody, but he was smiling. Then we'd better get ready for them, he said simply. As the coalition fleet took up defensive positions around Earth, Hyun-woo realized something had changed. The aliens were no longer giving orders to the humans. They were asking for advice. The monsters he had fought alongside for 5 years were starting to look at humanity with a mixture of admiration and something else. Something that looked almost like fear. Outside the viewing port, Earth continued to spin peacefully in space. But Hyun-woo knew that the real test was still coming. The main swarm fleet would arrive soon, and then they would see what humans could really do when their backs were against the wall. He had a feeling his alien friends were in for a surprise. The victory around Earth had bought them time, but everyone knew it wouldn't last long. Hyun-woo spent the next few days watching the frantic preparations happening throughout the solar system. What he saw made him question everything he thought. He knew about his own species. Captain Vextar had assigned him to work with human special forces to coordinate defenses. Hyun-woo expected to find desperate people preparing to make a final stand. Instead, he found something that made his skin crawl. Commander Jin-A Moon met him at a military base on Luna. The facility had been carved deep into the moon's rock, with tunnels stretching for kilometers in every direction. But these weren't hiding places. They were workshops. Welcome to Research Division 7, Jin-A said as she led him through corridors lined with laboratories. This is where we've been preparing for the real war. What do you mean, the real war? Hyun-woo asked. Jin-A stopped at a security door and pressed her hand to a scanner. The war against everything that wants to hurt humanity. That includes the Void Swarm, but it also includes anyone else who might threaten us in the future. The door opened, and Hyun-woo stepped into a room that made his blood freeze. The walls were covered with detailed analysis of every species in the coalition. Korthik biology charts showed the weak points in their natural armor. Mandorian phase shift patterns were mapped with mathematical precision. Vorthik psychic frequencies were recorded and studied. Dr. Dong Hyun, you looked up from a computer terminal covered with alien genetic codes. Oh, hello, Hyun-woo. Perfect timing. I was just finishing the psychological profiles. Psychological Profiles of what? Han Wu asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. Every species we've encountered, Dong Haiyan replied casually. We've been studying them for years. How they think, how they fight, what scares them, what they value most. It's fascinating research. Han Wu stared at detailed files on Captain Vexstar, Sergeant Grix, and Admiral Thokran. The documents contained information that should have been impossible for humans to know. Personal fears, combat weaknesses, even family relationships. How? Did you get all this information? We're very good at watching and listening, Jin'ei replied. Humans are naturally curious about everything around us. While our alien allies were focused on the Void Swarm, we were studying them too. Captain Minsu Chun entered the room carrying a case full of strange weapons. They looked like standard coalition gear, but something about them felt wrong to Haiyan Wu. New. Prototypes are ready for testing, Minsu announced. Sonic disruptors tuned to Korthek hearing frequencies. Psychic jammers that can block Vorthik mental abilities. And my personal favorite, light bombs that can force Mandorians out of phase shift. Why are you making weapons that target our allies? Haiyan Wu demanded. The room fell silent. Jin'ei, Dong Haiyan, and Minsu exchanged glances. Because they're not really our allies, Jin'ei said finally. They're our temporary partners. When this war ends, do you think the galaxy's most powerful warrior species are going to keep treating humans as equals? Dr. Dong Haiyan pulled up a holographic display showing coalition military structure. Look at the numbers, Haiyan Wu. Humans make up less than 5% of coalition forces, but we provide 60% of the raw materials and 70% of the manufacturing capacity. We're not partners. We're resources. Haiyan Wu wanted to argue, but he remembered all the times he had been assigned to support positions while aliens did the fighting. All the times his suggestions had been dismissed because humans were considered too weak to understand real warfare. So what's your plan? He asked. Survival, Minsu replied. We're going to win this war against the Void Swarm, but we're also going to make sure that humans never have to depend on anyone else for protection again. Jin'ei led him to another section of the facility where human soldiers were training. But these weren't normal military exercises. The soldiers were practicing against holographic enemies that looked exactly like coalition species. Meet Special. Unit Omega, Jin'ei said proudly. They've been training to fight every type of alien we might encounter. Not just the Void Swarm. Haiyan Wu watched as human soldiers used tactics specifically designed to counter alien abilities. They wore special armor that protected against psychic attacks. They used weapons that could track phase-shifted enemies. They moved in patterns that disrupted hive mind coordination. You're preparing to fight everyone, Haiyan Wu realized. We're preparing to protect ourselves, Jin'ei corrected. There's a difference. A soldier named Haewon Park approached them. She was Haiyan Wu's younger sister, though he hadn't seen her in 3 years. She looked different now, harder, more focused. Haewon, what are you doing here? Same thing, you. Our brother, fighting for humanity's future. She gestured to the training area. But I'm not pretending that our alien friends will always be friendly. The Kortheks, Mandorians, and Vortheks have been our allies for 5 years, Haiyan Wu protested. And before that, they were the monsters in our nightmares, Haewon replied. What makes you think they won't go back to being monsters when they don't need us anymore? Dr. Dong Haiyan called them over to another display. This one showed psychological analysis of the coalition species. Every one of these races respects only strength, he explained. The Kortheks follow whoever can defeat them in combat. The Mandorians serve whoever can provide them with the most fear to feed on. The Vorthaks ally with whoever has the strongest mental abilities. So what happens when the Void Swarm is gone? Jin'ei asked. Do you think they'll still respect humans who hide behind plasma rifles and body armor? Colonel Sung-Ho Kim joined their group. He commanded one of the human ground forces units and had fought alongside alien troops for years. I've watched Korthek warriors tear through enemy formations with their bare claws, Sung-Ho said. I've seen Mandorians spread terror through entire armies just by existing. I've watched Vortex crush minds like paper. They're magnificent warriors, but, Haiyan Wu prompted. But they're predictable, Sung Ho continued. The Korthex always charge directly at their enemies. The Mandorians always try to create maximum fear. The Vortex always attempt mental domination first. They rely on their natural abilities and never adapt. Humans don't have natural abilities, Minsu added. So we had to learn how to think our way out of problems. We had to become creative, adaptive, unpredictable. Dr. Ji-Hoon Lee entered the room with a datapad full of new research. He was one of the leading experts on void swarm biology and had been studying captured specimens. The analysis is complete, Ji-Hoon announced. I know how to kill them all. Everyone gathered around as Ji-Hoon displayed his findings. The void swarm's collective consciousness had a fatal weakness. It couldn't handle truly independent thought. The hive mind was designed to process coordinated attacks and organized resistance. But chaos and unpredictability cause system crashes in their shared consciousness. We don't need to outfight them, Ji-Hoon explained. We need to outthink them, make them think so hard about unpredictable human behavior that their hive mind breaks down. Han Wu stared at the research data. Everything was starting to make sense. The humans hadn't been weak during the earlier battles. They had been studying, learning, preparing. How long have you been planning this? He asked. Since the day we joined the coalition, Janae replied. We knew we were the weakest species in the alliance. So we decided to become the smartest. Warning alarms began blaring throughout the facility. A technician ran up to their group with urgent news. Long range. Sensors have detected the main void swarm fleet, he reported. Estimated arrival in 72 hours. Fleet composition is ... millions of bioships. The room fell silent as everyone processed the information. This was it. The final battle for Earth's survival. Are we ready? Haiyan Wu asked. Jin-A smiled, but there was something cold about her expression. Something that reminded Hin Wu of the way predators looked at prey. We've been ready for years, she said. The question is whether the galaxy is ready for what humans can do when we stop pretending to be weak. As they prepared to leave the facility, Haiyan Wu caught his reflection in a window. For the first time in 5 years, he didn't see a weak human standing next to powerful aliens. He saw something else entirely. He saw a member of a species that had spent years studying every possible enemy, preparing for every possible threat, and learning how to turn any disadvantage into a weapon. The monsters were coming, but Han Wu was beginning to realize that the real monsters might be the ones fighting alongside him. The void swarm arrived exactly when the sensors predicted. Haiyan Wu stood on the bridge of the Crimson Dawn and watched the sky around Earth turn dark with enemy ships. There were so many bio-vessels that they blocked out the stars. The largest fleet in galactic history had come to destroy humanity's homeworld. Captain Vextar's claws extended as battle rage began to take hold of him. Defensive positions, he ordered. All ships, prepare to protect Earth. But Admiral Yu Jin-song's voice came through the communication system with different orders. All human vessels, this is Admiral Song, execute Plan Omega. I repeat, execute Plan Omega. Han Wu watched in amazement as every human ship in the solar system suddenly changed course. Instead of forming defensive lines around Earth, they were heading directly toward the massive swarm fleet. What are they doing? Sergeant Grix whispered as he materialized beside the command console. That's suicide. Admiral Thokran's psychic voice filled the bridge with confusion. I cannot read their intentions. Their thoughts are ... chaotic. Captain Vextar turned to Haiyan Wu with desperation in his voice. Contact your command. Tell them to retreat to defensive positions. They cannot fight the entire swarm fleet directly. But Han Wu was beginning to understand what was happening. This wasn't desperation. This was the plan his sister and the other human soldiers had been preparing for years. They're not retreating, he said quietly. They're attacking. The first wave of human ships hit the swarm formation like a hammer blow. But instead of the coordinated assault the aliens expected, it was complete chaos. Ships attacked from impossible angles, retreated when they should advance, and regrouped in patterns that made no sense. Technician Haywon, Park's voice crackled through the communication system from her position on one of the human command ships. Phase 1 complete, she reported. Swarm hive mind is showing signs of processing strain. They're trying to predict our movements and failing. Dr. Mi-young Shin appeared on the main screen from a research vessel that was somehow staying hidden in the middle of the battle. Deploying cognitive virus now, she announced. Target, Swarm Collective Consciousness. What is a cognitive virus? Admiral Thokren demanded. Something we learned from studying you, Mi-young replied calmly. Psychic species like the Vortex use shared consciousness to coordinate large groups. But shared consciousness has weaknesses. If you introduce concepts that the hive mind can't process, the entire system starts to break down. Hyun-woo watched as strange devices launched from the human research ships. They weren't weapons in any traditional sense. They were transmitters, broadcasting pure human concepts directly into the swarm's collective consciousness. Ideas like individual creativity, personal choice, and the refusal to follow orders. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Swarm bioships began moving erratically, as individual vessels started making independent decisions. The perfect coordination that made the swarm so dangerous was falling apart. Commander Jae-sung Park led a squadron of human fighters directly into the heart of the enemy formation. His voice came through the communication system with deadly calm. Swarm! Bioships are showing confusion patterns, he reported. Some vessels are breaking away from the main fleet. Others are attacking their own allies. Captain Vexstar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. How is this possible? The Void Swarm has never shown internal conflict. Because they've never encountered true individuality before, Hyun-woo realized. Every species they've fought thinks in groups, pack hunting, hive minds, collective consciousness. Humans are the first species that values individual thought above group harmony. The battle was unlike anything in galactic history. Human ships moved through the swarm fleet like they were dancing instead of fighting. Every movement was unpredictable. Every attack came from an unexpected direction. Every retreat led to a surprise counterattack. Colonel Sung-ho Kim's ground forces were somehow fighting inside swarm bioships. His soldiers had used modified mining equipment to drill through enemy hulls and were spreading chaos from within. Internal disruption successful, Sung-ho reported. Swarm bioships can adapt to boarding tactics. Their internal defenses are designed for external threats only. Admiral Yoo Song coordinated the entire operation from her flagship, but Hyun-woo noticed that she wasn't giving orders in any traditional sense. Instead, she was providing information and letting individual captains make their own decisions. This is how humans fight, Yoo explained when Captain Vexstar questioned her tactics. We don't follow a single plan. We adapt constantly. Every ship, every pilot, every soldier makes independent choices based on the current situation. Scientist Ji-hoon Lee appeared on the communication screen with a report that made Hyun-woo's blood run cold. The cognitive virus is working better than expected, Ji-hoon announced. Swarm collective consciousness is beginning to fracture across multiple star systems. Bioships throughout the galaxy are losing coordination. You mean this battle is affecting swarm forces everywhere? Admiral Thokren asked. The hive mind is connected across vast distances, Ji-hoon replied. When we introduced human concepts of individuality into their collective consciousness, it spread like a disease. Swarm forces that have never encountered humans are suddenly experiencing independent thought for the first time. The implications were staggering. Humans weren't just winning a battle around Earth, they were destroying the Void Swarm's ability to function as a species, Captain Ninsu Chun's voice came through the communication system from deep inside the enemy formation. We've reached the central bionodes, he reported. Ready to deploy final phase weapons. Final phase weapons? Captain Vexstar demanded. What are final phase weapons? Dr. Mi Young Shin answered from her research ship. We've created a way to permanently infect the swarm's collective consciousness with human concepts. Once deployed, every swarm bioship in the galaxy will begin thinking as an individual instead of part of a hive mind. Han Wu felt sick as he realized what this meant. You're not just defeating them. You're changing them into something completely different. We're giving them the gift of free will, Mi Young replied. Whether they survive it or not is up to them. The final phase weapons deployed like silent explosions throughout the swarm fleet. Instead of destroying bioships, they infected them with something far more devastating, the concept of individual identity. The results were immediate and horrifying. Swarm bioships began turning on each other as individual consciousness awakened within the hive mind. Some tried to break away from the collective and flee. Others fought desperately to maintain the old unity. Most simply shut down as their systems couldn't handle the conflict between individual and collective thought. Admiral Thokran's psychic abilities let him sense what was happening to the swarm consciousness. His voice filled the bridge with awe and terror. They are screaming, he whispered. The collective mind is tearing itself apart. I can feel individual swarm entities trying to understand concepts they were never designed to process. It is ... beautiful and horrible. Sergeant Grix phased through the wall and materialized with his eyes wide with shock. The fear, he gasped. The swarm entities are experiencing terror for the first time. They don't understand what is happening to them. Captain Vexstar watched the tactical display as millions of swarm bioships across the galaxy began to malfunction. You have done something that no species in galactic history has ever accomplished. You have destroyed the Void Swarm without firing a single killing shot. President Unji Choi appeared on the main communication screen. She was broadcasting from Earth's capital, and behind her Han Wu could see the lights of cities that were still intact. Citizens of the galaxy, she announced. The Void Swarm threat has been neutralized. But more importantly, we have proven that no species, no matter how powerful, is unstoppable when faced with human ingenuity and determination. As the battle ended and the last swarm bioships either fled or shut down, Han Wu looked around the bridge at his alien colleagues. Captain Vexstar's claws had retracted, but his eyes held a new wariness. Sergeant Grix had stopped feeding on fear and was staring at the human crew members with something like respect mixed with terror. Admiral Thokran was floating lower than usual, his psychic confidence shaken. How long have you been planning this? Captain Vexstar asked quietly. Since the day we joined the coalition, Han Wu replied, repeating what Jin'ei had told him. We knew we were the weakest species in the Alliance, so we decided to become the smartest. The alien warriors who had protected humanity for 5 years were now looking at humans with the same expression they usually reserved for dangerous enemies. They were beginning to understand that the weak, helpless species they had been fighting alongside was something far more terrifying than any natural predator outside the viewing port. Earth continued to spin peacefully in space, but the galaxy would never be the same. The Void Swarm was gone, but something else had taken its place as the most dangerous species in known space. And that something was standing right beside them on the bridge. 3 months after the Void Swarm's defeat, Han Wu stood in the Coalition Council chambers on the space station. Harmony 7, representatives from every species in the galaxy had gathered to discuss the new reality they all faced. The chamber was designed to accommodate different alien biologies. Korthic delegates stood in reinforced sections that could handle their weight and sharp claws. Mondorian representatives flickered in and out of visibility in their designated phase shift zones. Vortha council members floated in psychic isolation chambers that prevented mental interference, and in the center of it all sat President Unji Choi, representing humanity with a calm smile that made everyone else in the room nervous. Admiral Thokran's psychic voice filled the chamber as he addressed the assembly. We are gathered to discuss the implications of recent events. The Void Swarm has been eliminated, but questions remain about methods used and future relationships. Captain Vexstar stood from his reinforced chair, his massive form casting shadows across the room. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that were previously unknown. We must address what this means for galactic security. Han Wu watched the alien representatives and saw something he had never noticed before. They were afraid. Not of the void swarm, which had been destroyed. They were afraid of the humans sitting calmly at the conference table. Delegate Morkan of the Korthak High Command spoke first. His voice carried the authority of a species that had conquered half the galaxy through raw strength. Humans have shown tactical abilities that border on unnatural, Morkan said carefully. Their victory over the swarm was achieved through methods that no honorable warrior would consider. You mean effective methods? President Unji replied with a polite smile. I'm sorry if our success made you uncomfortable. Sergeant Grix materialized. In the Mendorian section, his blue eyes still glowing from feeding on the fear that filled the chamber. Your species fights without honor, Grix accused. You study your enemies in secret. You prepare weapons against your allies. You turn strength into weakness through trickery. We fight to win, Commander Janae Moon said from her position behind the human delegation. Honor is a luxury for species that can afford to lose. Admiral Thokran's psychic abilities reached out to scan the human delegates, but Haiyan Wu noticed that they all wore small devices that disrupted mental intrusion. Even now, humans were protecting themselves from their allies. Dr. Mi Young Shin stepped forward with a datapad containing her research findings. If I may, she said politely, I'd like to address some concerns about our methods. The cognitive virus we used against the Void Swarm was specifically designed to target hive mind consciousness. It has no effect on individual minds or collective species that maintain personal identity. But you could modify it, suggested Council Speaker Velther of the Rigelian Assembly. You could create versions that target any type of consciousness. We could, Mi Young admitted, but we won't. Unless we're forced to defend ourselves. The threat was polite but unmistakable. Every alien representative in the chamber understood the implications. Captain Min-Soo Chun activated a holographic display showing the current galactic situation. Where the Void Swarm had once controlled vast territories, there was now empty space dotted with drifting bioships that had shut down when their collective consciousness collapsed. The former swarm territories are available for colonization, Min-Soo announced. We propose a joint coalition effort to explore and settle these regions. Under whose authority? Demanded General Krex of the Saurian military caste. Under the authority of whoever gets there first? President Unji replied sweetly. Haiyan Wu watched the alien delegates exchange worried glances. They were beginning to realize that the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted permanently. Colonel Sung-ho. Kim stood up with a report on post-war military assessments. Coalition forces performed admirably during the recent conflict, he said diplomatically. However, we've identified some areas where our alliance could be improved. The holographic display showed detailed analysis of every coalition species. Military capabilities, psychological profiles, and tactical weaknesses. Information that humans had been gathering for years while pretending to be junior partners in the alliance. This intelligence gathering was conducted without our consent, protested Ambassador Kickstall of the Centauran Federation. You're right, Sung-ho acknowledged. We should have asked permission before studying the species we were depending on for survival. Next time we'll be sure to announce our research projects in advance. The sarcasm was gentle but cutting. Everyone in the chamber understood that there wouldn't be a next time when humans had to depend on alien protection. Delegate Morkan's claws extended slightly as his battle instincts responded to the implied challenge. Humans speak as if they no longer need the coalition's protection, he growled. Do we? Asked Dr. Donghayan Yu from his position at the research table. We've just eliminated the greatest threat the galaxy has ever known. We've developed defensive technologies that can counter every known alien ability. We've established the most effective military tactics in recorded history. What exactly do we need protection from? The chamber fell silent. The question hung In the air like a weapon waiting to strike, Admiral Yujin Song activated another holographic display, this one showing human expansion throughout the solar system. Mining operations on asteroids, research stations around gas giants, defensive platforms protecting every inhabited world. Humanity has proven its capability for independent survival, Yujin announced. We're grateful for the Coalition's support during our early years, but we're ready to stand on our own now. You're withdrawing from the Coalition? Admiral Fokren asked, his psychic voice carrying undertones of alarm. Not withdrawing, President Unji clarified. Renegotiating. We're no longer junior partners who need guidance and protection. We're equals who bring unique capabilities to the Alliance. Han Wu looked around the chamber at the alien faces staring at the human delegation. Some showed fear, others anger, a few even displayed what might have been respect. But all of them showed the same realization: the weak species they had protected and patronized for 5 years had become something they didn't understand. Something that could match their natural abilities through pure intelligence and preparation. Scientist Ji-Hoon Lee stepped forward with the final presentation. We've prepared proposals for new research partnerships, he announced. Joint projects that could benefit all Coalition species. Disease cures, terraforming techniques, defensive technologies. And if we refuse these partnerships? Asked Speaker Velther. Then you refuse them, Ji-Hoon replied with a shrug. We'll continue our research independently. But we thought you might be interested in collaborating with the species that just solved the Void Swarm problem. The negotiations continued for hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The alien species that had once looked down on humanity as weak and helpless now found themselves asking for human assistance and expertise. As the session ended, Han Wu walked to the observation deck and looked out at the stars. Captain Vexstar joined him, moving more quietly than usual for a Korthic warrior. Your species has changed, Vexstar said finally. No, Hyun Wu replied. We've always been this way. You just never noticed before. The galaxy will never be the same, Vexstar continued. Other species will fear humans now. Good, Hyun Wu said calmly. Fear will keep them from trying to hurt us. Sergeant Grix materialized beside them, his ability to phase through matter no longer seeming as impressive as it once had. You have become the monsters now, Grix observed. Hyun Wu thought about that for a moment. He remembered 5 years of feeling weak and helpless while alien warriors did the fighting. 5 years of being assigned to support positions while real battles were fought by creatures with claws and psychic powers. Maybe we were always monsters, he said finally. We just learned to hide it better than the rest of you. Admiral Thokran's psychic voice reached them from across the station. The human delegates are requesting transport back to Earth, Thokran reported. They say they have work to do. Through the observation port, Hyun-Woo could see human ships preparing to leave the station. They moved with the same precise coordination they had shown during the battle against the Void Swarm. No wasted motion, no unnecessary communication, just efficient action directed toward a common goal. What kind of work? Captain Vexstar asked. Hyun-Woo smiled, and for the first time in years he felt proud of his species. The kind of work that makes sure humanity never has to depend on anyone else for survival again? He replied. As the human fleet departed from Harmony 7, representatives from across the galaxy watched them go. Some with relief, some with regret, but all with the understanding that the balance of power had shifted forever. The monsters that had once protected humanity were now asking themselves a simple question: if humans could do this to the Void Swarm, what could they do to anyone who threatened them? The answer, Hyun-Woo knew, was anything they needed to do. And that made all the difference. Behind them, Earth continued to spin peacefully in space, protected now not by alien warriors with natural weapons, but by a species that had chosen to become the most dangerous predators in the galaxy.